Transformers brand has existed since 1984 and in the past 40 plus years has had multiple iterations. One of the most popular iterations is the live-action film series, which for the sake of convenience I'll divide into two distinct eras. The first is 2007-2017, which is the first live-action films directed by Michael Bay, which is often called the Bayverse. The second era is what I will refer to by the commonly used name Nightverse, which encompasses the films Bumblebee, Rise of the Beasts, and Transformers 1. Each one of these 8 films had tie-in material, most notably toy lines, and while they were often fun, they lacked in a lot of key areas, namely scale, accuracy, and articulation. But thankfully, the company that owns Transformers, named Hasbro, had something cooking around the time of the final Bayverse film. Once the Last Night toy line was done, we would be introduced to the Studio Series range, which had the goal of giving screen-accurate toys with higher levels of articulation and film-inspired scale. The way to accomplish said scale was by using the 3 predominant price points the brand has been using for over 10 years by that point. The size class was called Deluxe, and was the standard size class where the figures were roughly 6 inches tall. The second size class was called Voyager, and had figures on a slightly taller scale, which was around 7 inches, though some were taller. The final size class was called Leader class, and either featured very tall figures or Voyager-sized figures with more complex transformations and or above-average paint/accessories. With all these advantages going for it, Studio Series was proving itself to be the best toy line for this specific branch of the fandom. Yet, things went wrong after a while, so without further ado, let's take an in-depth look at the Studio Series toy line and see just what happened to the toy line starting from the beginning in 2017 or early 2018. The toy line for the final Bayverse film titled Transformers The Last Night was marketed as the Premier Edition collection, which implied a more premium type of toy than offered previously. And while a lot of figures had issues, others were really good, and it would turn out these figures would lead to something incredible just a few months later. During an investors meeting, Hasbro was showing off plans for another line, and a photo was leaked showing 2 new Leader class figures with movie-specific branding on them, and they looked incredible. A bit later, 4 Voyagers were leaked thanks to the back of packaging for 2 of them getting found, where we could see a higher transformation skep count than some previous lines from the older films. Then finally at Toy Fair 2018, Hasbro officially announced the line, calling it Studio Series and showing off the first wave of deluxe figures, which went up for pre-order later that day. Now each figure's box tells you the number of the figure in the toy line, the name of the character, and which film they are from. The back of the box highlights the transformation steps, gives you a brief bio on the character, and also talks a little bit about the included background. Now starting with Studio Series 01, it could only be a character from the first live-action Transformers films, and they chose Bumblebee in his rusty 1967 Camaro form. Except not really, as the figure lacks any rust on it. Or beyond that, the figure's a decent way to start the line. The transformation scheme is mostly borrowed from the Last Night Bumblebee Deluxe, but with the parts changed to match this Bumblebee design. However, the figure sadly has issues, namely the back of the roof not staying on due to the clear plastic holding it in place with no pins there to assist it at all, causing it to wear over time, or in the worst case scenario, even break. Same thing with the door wings, which sadly are also made of clear plastic. So yeah, 01 Bumblebee was flawed, but it was still miles better than the actual 2007 figure, which itself is prone to breaking. Now let's flash forward to the newer films and see how they handle these designs. The second figure in the line was Stinger from the film Age of Extinction, a character who has previously never had an accurate deluxe figure, and this figure is pretty good. His transformation is complex, as his design is not easy to translate into a figure at all. Now, like Bumblebee, Stinger is prone to breaking, sadly, even more so at his torso, which can snap in the middle, and his claws can also break pretty easily if you transform him a lot. But still, if you get him, just keep him in robot mode and in a cool pose, and you'll have nothing to worry about, because this figure looks really good in robot mode. 03 was another character who didn't have a proper deluxe figure before. The figure was that of Crowbar from the film Dark of the Moon, who was never named in the film and only participated in one action scene with his brothers. But that isn't a problem, and I'm happy they did him so early on. Now, the figure itself looks very cool, but the transformation is mostly borrowed from the Last Night Berserker figure, but made worse due to Crowbar's dreads getting in the way a lot, but he does have a really cool shelf present to him, which I think makes him worth adding, plus there's no breakages on him from what I've heard. Now for 04, we end the Wave 1 Deluxes, and we are back to a 2007 character, this time it's Ratchet. Figure looks good, though the face is missing a ton of paint, but that, with these toys' price point, it's understandable. The transformation is mostly borrowed from the Dark of the Moon Deluxe Class Ratchet toy, but it's solid and fun, unlike the other three. So yeah, out of all the Wave 1 Deluxes, I'd say Ratchet's the most fun. Now, let's look at the first Wave Voyagers. 5 was reserved for the first Optimus Prime, who is stated to be from the film Revenge of the Fallen. The figure looks a bit odd due to the wider chest, but it's not bad, as the figure has the most articulation at this point in the line. Now, his accessories have a variant, as some swords are completely clear orange, while some are more of a misty orange. Another variant was an unmasked version, but to my knowledge only one report of exists. Now, sadly, what makes this figure not the best is the paint, as he is very darkly colored, which sadly isn't accurate, but personally I don't mind it as it's different and therefore unique. Now, the transformation borrows steps from an Age of Extinction Evasion Mode Optimus for the lower body, and Transformers Prime First Edition Optimus for the upper body. And yeah, the figure is fun to transform. It's honestly better than Deluxe is, mostly due to being the most posable and having no breakage issues, to my knowledge. Now, the next figure was Rizzo 6, is my first introduction to the line, and it was quite the introduction itself. The figure in question is 2007 Starscream. This figure looks very good in robot mode, though a minor note is that it has less accessories than the product images show, as that shows 2 accessories, but the figure only comes with 1, that being the missile launcher. The design does not allow for the same articulation as Optimus, but it's still a decent figure overall, though Optimus does have better articulation as expected. The transformation is basically identical to the Dark of the Moon Deluxe Starscream with a few extra steps added, but also more articulation, making the Studio Series one a better figure. So yeah, between the 2 Voyagers, I'd say Starscream is the better one, but Optimus is a better action figure due to the posability. But neither of them are that bad. So with that all being said, let's now take a look at the 2 leader classes from the first wave. 07 was the most impressive looking figure, as its robot mode looked 100% accurate to the CGI model, and it was Age of Extinction Grimlock. The Dinobot King the year prior had a figure in the Last Night toy line, and 4 years prior in the Age of Extinction line, but neither figure looked as accurate to the CGI model. But when we got the Studio Series figure, my god, this is amazing. Paint is immaculate, looking like a custom job. However, this figure is imperfect, as the articulation kind of sucks, especially in the lower body, making poses a chore, which you can see due to the stock images using the same pose, basically. The transformation, thankfully, is not frustrating, but the T-Rex mode leaves a bit to be desired, especially with all the gaps it has. But overall, this figure is spectacular. I highly recommend him. He might be the best figure in the first wave overall. 08 was another character from the 2007 Transformers film, and is significant as he is the very first Transformer we ever see in live action. I'll never forget watching this movie for the first time and seeing that helicopter start making some noise, and then all of a sudden just transforming like that. I'm, of course, talking about 2007 Blackout. Now, Blackout looks really good and has an amazing presence to him. Now, sadly, his design has his hand stuck in a constant limp wrist pose, but beyond that, the articulation is fair given the design, and this can be put in some dynamic poses. Transformation's pretty tough, but it's not so bad, though it is a little clashy. The figure doesn't come with any traditional accessories, but it does come with a minifigure of Scorponok, which is a nice bonus. Overall, the figure is pretty good, and it does look very nice on your shelf. And that's the first wave. It's a pretty decent start. It's got some growing pains with some, breakages like Bumblebee and Stinger, but with Grimlock, Blackout, Starscream, Optimus, and Ratchet, I'd say it's a decent way to start the line. 9 was a Toys R Us exclusive and was Dark of the Moon Thundercracker, a character who is not in any of these movies that was released up to this point, and is simply a repaint of the Last Night Nitro Zeus, but with a head inspired by BAYVERSE Starscream. While the Nitro Zeus figure was one of the best molds from the Last Night toy line, these colors, while they look cool, aren't really necessary, and because this character isn't in the movie, there's really no reason to buy it unless you just like the colors or you want the mold. Number 10 is another character from the 2007 film. This time it is Autobot Jazz. Now, Jazz looks very good. It has some amazing silver paint, though sadly some paint chipping is inevitable. He can hold his weapon in his right hand in a handheld formation, but the intended method is to fold the hands away and plug it into a port. Transformation is mostly borrowed from the Human Alliance Jazz figure, but the vehicle mode does look very, very nice. So overall, Jazz is probably the best deluxe in the line, as the transformation is fun and smooth, the paint is very good, and he's got no breakage issues. Number 11 is another figure from Age of Extinction, and this time it's the primary antagonist, Lockdown. Now, the figure itself looks very, very good and is a very big improvement over the original figure. While the figure looks very good in robot mode, it is sadly prone to breaking at the shoulders during transformation as they need to be rotated on clear plastic joints, which can sadly break. But the vehicle mode does look very nice, and overall, the figure does have a very good look to him. But I'd recommend just leaving him in robot mode because once those clear plastic shoulders break, you can't fix them. 12 is yet another character from 2007. This time is Decepticon Brawl. Brawl is a pretty bulky Voyager and looks pretty good, though his shoulders are a bit awkward and the hands are very flat as they are hidden in the tank shells. Beyond that, the transformation's pretty fun, and overall, it looks good in both modes, so I'd recommend him. 13 was one I was very, very excited for, and it is Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, our first Megatron in the line. He looks very impressive in robot mode, though he really needed more paint, which sadly the promo renders do show a more silver paint job, but final figure is just gray. The figure is also sadly very hollow in the midsection. As for transformation, it's pretty alright, though the legs have a hard time tapping in sometimes. Overall, though, the figure is very, very good and is one of my favorite Voyagers in the line. 14 is another Voyager and from 2007. In this case, it was Ironhide, making 4 2007 Autobots total so far. Now, the figure looks pretty solid, but his torso has a bumper that is kind of distracting. But beyond that, he looks pretty great. Now, sadly, I do not own him as he is rather rare, but from what I hear, this transformation is a bit tough. But thankfully, no breakages are known. So overall, Ironhide is a mixed bag. He looks cool and has pretty decent posability, but his transformation and rarity might make him one to pass on for now. Number 15 is our first figure from the BAYVERSE, which was the beginning that year with the Bumblebee movie. And as such, the first figure in the line is Bumblebee with Charlie. Now, the Bumblebee figure is identical to Studio Series 01 with the paint being missing in the car mode. And that's because of the customizable parts and stickers that you can add to the vehicle mode, which sadly does make the figure very inaccurate to what it's supposed to depict. So overall, I can't really recommend this unless you really want the Charlie figure or you think customizing the vehicle is cool. Wave 3 of the Deluxes begins with a repaint of a previous mold, this one being Ratchet, and now in his Dark of the Moon color scheme. The figure is identical to 04, except they swapped out the weapon and they gave him new colors, obviously. But they also improved the quality control, apparently. So I'd say that this is probably the better Ratchet to grab. 17 is an even weirder one, as this character is very inaccurate to how they appear in the film. This is Shadow Raider from Age of Extinction. In the film, they look like this, but the toy looks like this, which is because it's a repaint of Lockdown, but now with a new gun and a new head. The head is seemingly based on Lockdown's battle mask, while the gun is what he uses in the film. This figure is only orange because Lamborghinis are often orange in real life. So yeah, this figure is basically just extra parts for Lockdown. But if you don't have one, this one's fine, but it still does have the arm breakage issue, so do be careful. Number 18 is another figure from the BAYVERSE, and it is another Bumblebee, this time based on the look he has throughout a majority of the film, though it is sadly based on concept art, as in the final film he does not have the door wings that the figure is shown to have. The figure comes with a swappable blaster, a knife hand, and a swappable faceplate, which is the most accessories to the line thus far. The transformation, sadly, is very, very rough, with a lot of things getting in the way, and it having the same kind of clear plastic back issue that the 01 version had. But overall, it is a decent figure, but sadly, there's not much reason to own him anymore, as a much better one exists coming much later on in the line. 19 and 20 were exclusive figures given out at certain places. The first one was Comic-Con, the other one was Entertainment Earth. Those figures are repaints of Studio Series Bumblebees, 19 being 01 and 20 being 18. 19 is a gold repaint of the old one Bumblebee, but now coming with 2 G1 cassette tapes, while 20 is the same thing, but with the 18 mold. And honestly, between the two, I'd say 20 is better, which is good because he was more widely available than 19. But overall, neither of these are really worth it unless you need some G1 cassettes. Number 21 is another repaint, and this time it's from the Revenge of the Fallen movie. It is Starscream. The figure looks really nice, but it is just a repaint of the '07 Starscream, which was figure number 6 in the line, but now actually gives him the saw blade accessory that was previously removed. So overall, either figure is fine, but personally, I like this one more just because of the better paint on the figure, but you can get both like I did and you'll be happy. Number 22 is the second Knifeverse character to get added to the line, and this time it's Dropkick from the Bumblebee movie. The figure does not look very accurate to the movie because in the movie he's a lot more blue. This figure is based on a piece of concept art, but beyond that, it does very fun to transform, I'd say. Like, it looks complicated, but it's actually very simple, and it's kind of fun, though the posability isn't great. So overall, I'd say get them just for the fun transformation alone. Number 23 is from Age of Extinction and is another repaint of the line. This time, the character is called KSI Sentry, which is just a repaint of Stinger, but it also swaps out the weapons, as Stinger came with ninja stars, while this figure comes with a blade. Overall, either figure is fine, but again, do be careful, as these figures are very prone to breaking. But that's to be expected, since it's an early Studio Series figure just getting repainted. 24 and 25 was a Target exclusive multi-pack called Bumblebee Then and Now. The figures included are 18 Bumblebee and the Last Night Deluxe Bumblebee. 18 Bumblebee now features some paint in the car mode, which makes it slightly more accurate, but is not really worth justifying a whole new number for it. And 25 Bumblebee is the Last Night Deluxe Bumblebee, but with less paint, as that figure actually had paint on the knees, while this one doesn't. So overall, this pack doesn't really give you much incentive to buy it, so I'd say just skip it unless you really want rust on your Beetle Bumblebee. And with that, we have officially finished the first year of Studio Series. And honestly, while it does have some growing pains, it's not terrible, especially compared to Hasbro's first year with, like, Marvel Legends, for example. Now, that was really bad. But this was decent, and like I said, before there's a fall, there's a rise, and we'll get to that rise. 26 is the first figure of 2019, and is a new mold for the Last Knife film, which is the first in the line. This is World War II Bumblebee. Now, the figure looks pretty good, but he does have a bunch of stuff on his back, and that is because he is what is referred to as a shell former, where all the vehicle parts end up on the back in sort of like a turtle shell formation, you could say. Now, beyond that, he does look pretty cool, and he does include his Warhammer, which he did not use in World War II, but he did use in his fight against Nemesis Prime, so that is a cool addition. The transformation, by necessity of being a shell former, sadly is not very fun, and the vehicle, from what I understand, is inaccurate to the film, but still, overall, I'd say it's cool enough. Like, it's a very unique Bumblebee, which is something a lot of them aren't, because they all usually have the same color and kind of general look to them. 7 is another 01 Bumblebee repaint, this time called Clunker Bumblebee. The figure looks identical to 01, except that they did actually fix the backpack by putting a pin in it so you can't remove the clear plastic windshield as easily, though it is still clear plastic, so it may break. The biggest addition, though, is the rust paint in the vehicle mode. So, yeah, overall, I'd say get this one over 01. There's really no downside to it. It's more accurate, and it's a better figure overall. 28 is another 2007 figure. This time it's the Decepticon Cop Barricade. The figure looks very cool and film accurate in robot mode. Sadly, the transformation is a bit fiddly, but he does look very cool, though I will admit some later copies remove the To Punish and Enslave logo, most notably the 2-pack with him in Clunker Bumblebee. Also, do be careful when transforming him, as there is a clear plastic piece on his windshield that can crack if you're not careful. So overall, though, damn, man, this figure looks really cool. So I'd say get him, keep him in robot mode, get him in a good pose, put him next to Bumblebee, you're good. 29 is a very popular Autobot from the Bayverse, that being Dark of the Moon Sideswipe. The figure looks very cool in robot mode and surprisingly can stand super well despite the wheel feet. He also comes with above average accessories, which is a neat bonus. Though unfortunately the robot mode lacks a lot of paint, but, can't have everything. Now, the transformation is mostly borrowed from the Dark of the Moon MechTech Deluxe figure of Sideswipe. But that's okay, as that was already a good figure. And the vehicle mode looks really nice, and thankfully the transformation's fun. Also, the vehicle has a ton of silver paint, so we can see where all the paint budget went. So yeah, overall, Sideswipe is a very, very good deluxe, and it's the best one in the wave, I'd say. 30 was another Dark of the Moon Brother Dread, and this time it is Crankcase. Now, the figure looks absolutely nothing like Crankcase. In fact, it looks like Crowbar because, yes, it is just Crowbar with some new paint. Which is weird because Crowbar uses the Last Night Berserker mold, which looks a lot like Crankcase. So why Hasbro didn't just repaint Berserker is anyone's guess. So yeah, this figure fails as a Studio Series figure, and I can't recommend him. I'd say just grab a Last Night Berserker mold and pretend that it's Crankcase, as Hasbro pretended that a gold Crowbar was Crankcase. 31 was another Revenge of the Fallen character. This time it is Megatron again, but this time it also represents him after getting his face blown off by Optimus Prime, and then proceeding to have the absolute crap beaten out of him in that final fight. The figure looks identical to 13, but has a new head and, most importantly, bright silver paint, because the original just had gray. So overall, between the two of them, get this one. The nice silver and black, like battle damage, is a much better paint job than the dull gray of the original. 32 was the first remake of the line, if you don't count Clunker Bumblebee, this is being 2007 Optimus Prime. While the figure has some similarities with 05, it does have a new chest, and that does slim out the proportions a lot, making it a lot better. But sadly, the transformation is affected and is a lot worse, so I'd say get him, but do leave him in robot mode, as while the transformation suffers, the paint in the robot mode looks a lot nicer and proportions look a lot better. 33 was meant to pair with the 32 Optimus, and this is 2007 Bone Crusher, who did fight Optimus in the movie. The figure looks very, very cool in robot mode. He is a bit short and squat, but that is accurate. As for the vehicle mode, it also looks very accurate, and the transformation is very simple and very fun. Overall, Bone Crusher is a very solid Voyager in the line, though he is quite rare, so good luck finding one. Number 34 brings back a leader class size assortment, which we have not seen since the first wave, and it is of Dark of the Moon Megatron. This figure looks amazing in robot mode, even features a soft cloak to put over his head, and also comes with a minifigure of Igor, which you can plug onto his back. The transformation, sadly, is very complex and very fiddly, but the truck mode looks very, very cool, and that is awesome. So overall, if you get this figure, put him in an amazing pose in robot mode with his cloak on and just leave him there because he looks spectacular. 35 is an even better leader class figure, and this time it is Jetfire from Revenge of the Fallen. This figure looks amazing, has so much painted detail, and the transformation, while complex, is pretty fun, though look on his nose cone. That's a yellow dot. That's weird. It's only the one. But whatever. I love it. I'm adding it to the thumbnail. But now this figure's best part is it can split into multiple pieces and combine with 32 Optimus Prime to form Jet Power Optimus Prime. And yeah, that is amazing. I'd say Jetfire is probably the best leader class in terms of value that you can get for the Studio Series line. 36 is another figure from the last night. This time it is Autobot Drift. The figure looks very good in robot mode, though it is familiar as this figure is a repaint of the Last Night Deluxe Drift, but the paint job here is much, much better. Beyond that, he does come with new Baby Dinobot minifigures, which are very, very cool, as well as a new long sword that's more accurate to the film. But still, if you are like me and you own the original Last Night Drift, there's not much incentive to grab this one beyond the Baby Dinobots. 37 was the start of something really cool in the line, and that begins with Constructicon Rampage. Now, Rampage looks really good in robot mode, though he has provided a stand as he doesn't really have any legs, to say. The transformation is pretty fun, though things can get in the way sometimes, so take it slow, but you should be okay. He's not, that bad to transform. Beyond that, he can also become Devastator's foot, but it is the wrong color. But don't worry, as many Constructicons were on the way throughout the year. and a bit of next year. So overall, I recommend Rampage, as he is a very fun figure to transform and has a very unique look to him. But because he's inaccurate for Devastator, I recommend you leave him in robot mode. 38 was a very hyped figure in the line, and it is another one of the Nightverse designs. This time it is Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. This figure looks very good and very accurate, which is a big step up from the last couple of Bumblebee movie figures. His transformation is sadly a bit complex, as he has a lot of panels that fold away and have to be rotated in specific areas, but truck mode does look very nice, even if it is a little inaccurate to how it appears in the film, and instead is based more so on how the G1 truck looks. But overall, I'd say this is the best Nightverse figure so far, and definitely worth getting. 39 is another of the Last Night Deluxes. This time it is the character Cogman. Now, Cogman here is a repaint of the Last Night Premiere Edition Deluxe Cogman. In that figure's case, it was interesting because the character never transformed in the film, but he was called a headmaster. And as such, the head was removable and could transform into a more size-accurate Cogman, while the rest of the body transforms into the car that he drove in the film. Overall, Cogman is a very fun transformer to buy, but if you own the original, there's no reason to grab this one, as I prefer that deco. 40 brings us back to the Nightverse with one of the film's most popular characters, that being Shatter. Now, the figure is sadly based on the concept art of the character and not her final film look. Now, in the film, Shatter does have two vehicle modes, a car and a jet. This figure chooses the car mode, and unfortunately, the figure really sucks. The arms like to pop off all the time, along with the headlights, making transformation a real pain. So if you get this figure, just keep her in vehicle mode. You will thank me later. 41 is our second Constructicon in the line, and this time it is a character not even seen in the film, named Scrap Metal. Now, the figure looks pretty accurate to the concept art design that I just showed you, and transforms into a tiny construction frame pretty easily. And he can also form a hand for Devastator. So overall, I'd say get him, but those aftermarket prices are just not kind. So maybe wait for a re-release. 42 continues our Constructicon lineage with Long Haul, one of the best designs for the Constructicons. The figure looks very, very accurate to the source material, though due to his very chonky nature is a lot harder to pose than some of the other figures in the line. The transformation is pretty alright from what I can tell, though I have heard reports of the back of the dump truck not sitting in together, plus there is a lot of kibble on the top of it. But beyond that, he also forms another foot of Devastator, which is cool, and overall I'd say he's a really good Constructicon and probably the best one. 3 is another Decepticon in the line from the Age of Extinction film. This time it is Carius I Boss. The mold is of Last Night Nitro's use, which was already used by 09 Thundercracker, though this time the figure looks a lot nicer, having bright silver paint all over, which makes the figure pop. And also the tolerances have also been improved, making the transformation a lot smoother and more fun. So overall, I'd say get this version over Nitro Zeus or Thundercracker, because that silver paint just makes this figure pop so well. 44 finishes off our Optimus trilogy from the Bayverse, giving us Jetwing Optimus Prime from the film Dark of the Moon. The figure looks amazing, even though he is mostly a reuse of 32 Optimus, but now with his jetpack and 2 guns. To make up for the leader class price point, though, they did include a bunch of extra weapons that can all store in his trailer to form a weapons rack in robot mode. Transformation is identical to 32, but the trailer's transformation is pretty simple overall, which is good. And yeah, this is the best Bayverse Optimus from the trilogy, as he has the most options and can still combine with Jetfire on top of that. Plus, the paint budget is a lot nicer than the Voyagers because of the higher budget of the figure. 45 gives us another Age of Extinction character, this time our first Autobot in that film, this time being Drift. Now, Drift in that film was a triple changer, having a car mode and a helicopter mode. This figure chooses the helicopter mode, and as such, it uses a lot of parts and transformation from 22 Dropkick. However, I feel this suits Drift a lot more, as the robot mode looks a lot more accurate, and more importantly, the helicopter mode also looks really good, though it does have a few gaps. So overall, between the two, I'd say get Drift, as he looks a lot nicer in robot mode compared to Dropkick. 46, coincidentally enough, is Dropkick, but not the same Dropkick. This is Car Dropkick, who looks pretty accurate to how he looks in the movie, unlike the first figure. It looks a lot nicer, but sadly the transformation is very fiddly. The parts are very, thin, and it's not that easy to get them all into the car components. But overall, though, this is a much better dropkick and much better than Shatter was in her car form. So I recommend him as your dropkick for your Studio Series display. 47 is our final Constructicon of the year, that being Hightower. Like with Scrap Metal, we never see him transform in the film, but the design the toy has is very fun and creative. He is pretty tiny, but looking at his design, that makes sense. And also, articulation's very limited, just because look at him. But he does transform into a tiny construction crane, and it looks really fun. Honestly, I really want one. He just looks so funny that I love him. 48 is the final figure of the year, and boy, what a weird way to end the year. It is of the meet and greet Megatron at Universal Studios based on Transformers The Ride. The figure is a repaint of 34 Megatron, but without the cloak accessory and the little Igor minifigure, and is mostly cast in a gray paint. Honestly, I prefer 34 Megatron as he just looks a lot cooler, but this is definitely a fun novelty item to grab if you were at Universal Studios, though he is no longer being sold at Universal Studios, which is dumb. And with that, we bring 2019 to an end. Definitely an upgrade over the first year, but it is weird that it ended on another exclusive. It's weird that it happened twice in a row, but now let's move on to what I consider to be the true peak of Studio Series, that being 2020. Back to the rise and fall of Studio Series. This is part 2 in the ongoing series where we document what happened to this toy line. So now we are going to start with where we left off, with that being 2020, and let's see how far we get this time. 49 is another 2007 mold, but this time it's a new mold using his 2007 Camaro design. This figure looks a lot better than the previous one, though it still does borrow some transformation steps from 01/27, and the Dark of the Moon Bumblebee, strangely enough. He has his battle mask deployed, but the head can be swapped with 01 or 27. And, well, the transformation is different and a lot more complex, but I don't find it very frustrating personally, and I didn't hear of any breakages. So overall, I'd say this Bumblebee is the best one in the line so far. Despite 50 being a big number, we got a very obscure character, that being Hot Rod from The Last Night in his World War II look. The figure looks pretty good in the robot mode, though it is basically identical to the World War II Bumblebee figure, and all pros and cons are the same, so pick which one you like more. One is another Dark of the Moon Decepticon, and a big name in the brand. It's Soundwave. Now, Soundwave looks amazing with all his silver paint applications and does look very accurate to the film. Instead of coming with traditional weaponry, he comes with Laserbeak, which is a nice little character-specific accessory. Transformation is sadly not very fun, as a lot of stuff is very hard to feed through tight clearances, but it's not the worst one ever, and honestly, overall, he does look really good in both modes, just sadly the transformation's a little bad. 52 is another character from Revenge of the Fallen, or should I say characters, as we got RC, Chromia, and Alita 1 in a 3-pack. The figures are marked as a deluxe because they are tiny. Now, they do include stands to help them stand up because they have wheel feet. Sadly, that's not going to help the quality control much, as they like to fall off a lot. Not on their stands per se, but their ball joints don't stay on, which makes transformation a nightmare, as sadly it's very complex for their size. I should also mention they have a supposed combined mode, but it's not listed in the instructions, and it looks like that. So yeah, if you get these, leave them on display in robot mode in like one pose, but honestly, I don't recommend them at all. 3 is the next Constructicon piece, and it is Mixmaster from Revenge of the Fallen. He looks very good and is very, very lanky, but that's accurate to the film design. He can form the cannon mode that he used in the Battle of Egypt, which is cool. Transformation is pretty simple, a lot more simple than his old Voyager toy from Revenge of the Fallen, which was described as feeling like origami. And he can also form Devastator's head mode, and it looks really cool in it, so yeah. I definitely recommend him, especially if you're going after Devastator, because then you'll need him. 54 was the most hyped figure in the lineup to this point, and that is the final 2007 member, Megatron. The figure looks very good in robot mode, having almost no kibble whatsoever. The one slight inaccuracy is the chest, that is, it is reused from the Revenge of the Fallen figure. Transformation is very, very fun and very simple despite this design, and overall, this figure is really good and might be the best Voyager in the line. 55 was our first leader class of the year, and it's another Constructicon. This time it is Scavenger. The figure looks really good in robot mode and very accurate, though he does have no legs to stand on, so you have to be very careful with posing him. Transformation's a little confusing, but not overly hard to you're at once you get it done the first few times. And he combines into Devastator's upper torso, which looks very cool. So overall, I'd recommend him as a nice fun figure, even if you don't want him for Devastator. E6 was one of the most hyped ones for me personally, as it's Dark of the Moon Shockwave, my favorite Transformers design ever. The figure looks basically perfect, with zero kibble issues whatsoever. He comes with little minifigures of Wheelie and Brains, since he's a little smaller than the average leader. He also comes with a Nest Paratrooper that can plug onto his shoulder if you feel like it. Transformation is surprisingly borrowed from 13 Megatron, but actually fixes the leg problem, making this actually a lot more fun to transform than that figure. And overall, I'd say this might be the best leader class for me personally, but I highly recommend you get one. E7 is back to the Knightverse with another Bumblebee variant. This time is called Off-Road Bumblebee. This figure is based on his first look he has in the movie, which he sports for only about 5 minutes when he lands on Earth. Figure has a nice look to it overall, though, and does include a cool feature where you can plug the blade included on 18 Bumblebee on his forearm, which is a nice bonus. Transformation is very good, actually, with no frustrations at all, which is a really rare commodity for Bumblebees. And overall, I'd say this is the best Bumblebee in the line, even beating out the 49 Bumblebee. But that one is still good too, but this is way better. 58 is the first of the Dark of the Moon Wreckers, and that being the one called Roadbuster. Figure looks very good, though he is missing some paint apps for some of the advertisements on his NASCAR mode, on the robot mode, but that's okay because not all ads would show up on a figure like this. You can't expect that. The transformation is apparently pretty alright, though some roof tabs have some trouble holding together, but overall I'd say he's a decent deluxe, and it is nice to get some more Dark of the Moon Autobots, though he is very expensive, so I'd recommend you waiting for a reissue, hopefully. 59 is another deluxe figure, and this time it's from the Knightverse, surprisingly enough. It's the main villain of the film Shatter in her jet form this time. Figure looks much better than the original one ever did, and she has really good posing and an accurate head. Transformation is also very fun and simple, but really fun to flip back and forth between. There's no flaws overall. Shatter might be my favorite deluxe in the line. She's just that good. She excels in pretty much every aspect of a Transformers figure. 60 represents the final of our Constructicon limbs, sort of. This one's called Scrapper. Now, the figure looks very accurate to the concept design I just showed you, as this character is never actually seen that well in the film. Transformation looks alright. I can't really judge it too much as I don't own the figure, but I will say the hand mode does look very good, and overall I'd say he's a good looking figure and I would like to own him one day. 61 is another figure that I really wish I owned, and is another main villain from the films. This time it is Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime. The figure looks very cool, though is sadly way too dark in the plastic compared to how the color is supposed to look on the film. Now, in the instructions mark him as an Autobot, but the box marks him as a Decepticon, which is a nice nod to his role in the movie. The transformation doesn't seem too bad, though from what I can tell, some stress marks are known to show up on the figure, so do be careful. But overall, this figure looks very cool, and I really wish I owned one, so I hope they re-release him for the film's 15th anniversary next year. C2 is another Revenge of the Fallen cast member, and this time it's Soundwave, based on his satellite look from the movie. Now, in the film, Soundwave only looks like a satellite, so the figure had to invent a robot mode for him. But as for the satellite mode, it's not the best, though it does include a nice flight stand, which is a cool accessory. But the robot mode that they invented actually looks really cool. But sadly, transformation to get from robot to satellite is very bare bones and boring. But overall, I'd say just get him for the robot mode, as it is a very cool look to him. E3 is our second of the Dark of the Moon Wreckers, and my personal favorite. This time it's Top Spin. Figure looks very amazing and film accurate, though one thing to keep in mind is that the rubber pipes on his collarbone have brittle plastic below, which can break easily if not handled carefully. Transformation is very fun and stress-free, which is a nice change of pace for a lot of these Bayverse designs, though some parts are reused from the Roadbuster figure. Overall, this is my personal favorite record they made, and is one to keep an eye out for, and hopefully they gets re-released along with the other two records. 4 is surprisingly another Bumblebee movie figure, which is very nice since they barely got any before, and this time it's a more obscure character, that being Cliffjumper. The figure looks pretty accurate to how we see the character, though he isn't damaged like he was in that one scene. His vehicle mode is not shown in the film, but since the CGI model is based on the one Bumblebee had on Cybertron, he uses that vehicle mode. Transformation isn't the best, and there are some clear plastic tabs that can break very easily. But overall, I'd say he's a good figure. 5 keeps the Bumblebee movie train going, this time giving us Blitzwing. The robot mode looks very cool and accurate, though sadly his chest does not like to tab in very well. But one does make up for it with this cool gimmick with his hand where he can hold Bumblebee by the throat, specifically the off-road Bumblebee, to be seen accurate. Now, transformation is sadly a chore due to the quality control, but overall, it's a good Voyager, but I'd recommend leaving him in robot mode as that's where he shines the most. 56 is technically our final Constructicon in the line, and that is the one called Overload. Now, Overload is never actually seen in robot mode in Revenge of the Fallen, but the figure does look pretty accurate to the concept art. The transformation is pretty tough, but it's a leader class, so it kind of makes sense. Now, he does form the crotch of Devastator, but sadly, there is no Wrecking Ball, so I'm very sad too. So overall, he's a pretty good figure, but he is not the final Constructicon. 67 is the official final Constructicon, and that is that of Skipjack. If he looks familiar to you, that is because he is a repaint of 37 Rampage, but now yellow. The reason for this is that Devastator has a yellow foot, not a red one. So if you get both, you'll have Rampage for display and Skipjack for Devastator. 68 is a Target exclusive, and it is our final wrecker, that being Leadfoot. He looks exactly like he does in the film and is very bulky for a deluxe. He comes with a dog accessory, which is very unique. Now, the transformation seems to be decent enough as I don't own him since he was a very expensive figure online. But with him, that completes our record team, and yeah, what a very solid set. 69 is the final figure of the year, and it's only fitting to end the peak year of Studio Series with Devastator. This figure is a box set version of the other Constructicons, giving you all of them in one set. As such, the figure looks pretty alright, though it's a bit too up straight for how Devastator is supposed to be in the film. But if you'd missed out on any of the Constructicons previously, this is a great way to get them, and it does give you all of them in one box set, finally giving you Devastator as a whole, which they've been building to since the beginning of last year. 2020 in general was great. It felt like everything got attention, with the slight exception of Age of Extinction, but besides that one film, everything was accounted for, and it was the year the Bumblebee movie film got more love, but sadly, once you reach peak, you must hit a downfall, and that all begins with 2021. 2021 begins with 86? What? We were on 70. And wait, what's this? 8601. Is this a subline? That can't make any sense. Okay, which movie is it from? The Transformers the movie. That's that G1 movie. Why is it now only in the line? This line was meant to only be about live action so far. If not, then why did it take 3 years to introduce this into the line? It's also not like G1 had zero representation in modern toy lines, because the previous year we just got the Earthrise toy line, which was very G1 accurate, and the current year that this 86 subline was introduced, we're getting the Kingdom toy line, which, while yes, is a lot of Beast Wars figures, over half the line is still G1. In fact, one of the major players of the G1 movie, that being Galvatron, is only in the Kingdom line and wouldn't be added to 86 until years later, where we see that it's the exact same figure, just with slightly different paint. This line also gave us a full set of G1 Dinobots, which is cool, but we just got some previously in 2018, which was the same year we got BAYVERSE Grimlock, and ever since then we've had no other BAYVERSE Dinobots, but the G1 set had two in the time that we only got one BAYVERSE figure of Grimlock and no other Dinobots, so yeah, that's kind of unfair. Alright, well, 86 is just a subline, so I'm sure the main Studio Series portion still has a decent amount of figures, so let's see how many we got that aren't G1 figures. Oh, 9 out of 19, that's only 47%. Oh, but wait. One figure got delayed and was supposed to come out earlier. All right, so 10 out of 20, 50%. Oh my, all right. This is not much of a subline. That's just kind of half the line, but I hope these figures are good. 70 is another Bumblebee movie figure, and this time it's one from the Cybertron scene. It's B-127 himself, or Bumblebee, as he's known on Earth. Figure is a yellow cliff jumper, which is alright, though it does feature a new head, which does have the battle mask deployed, though if you own Off-Road Bumblebee, the heads are swappable, and in fact a variant came out later that does have the unmasked head. Overall, though, if you own one mold, there's not really a reason to get both unless you really like the just building out the Bumblebee movie cast. 71 is another first-time character. This time it is Dark of the Moon Dino, also known as Mirage. The figure looks very, very accurate in robot mode, though sadly the vehicle mode is not a Ferrari due to the Ferrari license being very hard to acquire for toy figures. The transformation is pretty simple, though it can be a little confusing at times, but overall the figure looks very nice, and this was the first Dino figure, ever. So I highly recommend you pick one up if you can find it. 72 is another Bumblebee movie figure and based on the Cybertron scene again. Anyway, it's Starscream. This figure has a very similar look to 65 Blitzwing, but while they do have a similar transformation steps, no parts are reused. Sadly, that also means the head, which looks very bad. Figure is built better than Blitzwing, but doesn't suffer from any QC issues. The transformation, though, is pretty good. Though the Cybertronian jet mode looks kind of weird, but it makes sense since it's Cybertronian. Overall, pretty good figure and definitely better than Blitzwing. 73 is another character from Revenge of the Fallen. This time it is the Decepticon Grindor. Now, Grindor here looks very similar to '08 Blackout, and that is because in the film they share the exact same model. However, Grindor is canonically much bigger than Blackout, which is a problem because Studio Series is about accuracy. This kind of reminds me of how in the 90s, Cheetor and Tigatron were repaints of each other, but the same year the Grindor came out, Kingdom, Tigatron, and Cheetor came out, and we see that Tigatron is much taller than Cheetor like he should be. Beyond that, though, Grindor does have a lot of improvements over Blackout, namely better wrists. Now they can rotate and have hinged fingers. He also replaces the Scorponok minifigure with Ravage, which is very cool. So overall, I'd say Grindor is a very big improvement over Blackout, but still, it annoys me to see that the G1 affiliated stuff like Beast Wars is able to get, improvements for screen accuracy's sake, but Studio Series can't. 74 is another repaint again. This time it's Revenge of the Fallen Bumblebee. This figure is identical to 49 with some new parts of the car mode and some paint, but the transformation is unaffected. The big new thing with this release is that a new minifigure of Sam, who is the first human since the Paratrooper with Shockwave, and does make this figure better than 49 to me. So yeah, if you want Sam or prefer this color scheme, then I recommend him. 75 is our most obscure character yet, that being Jolt from Revenge of the Fallen, a character who has literally 20 seconds of screen time. The figure looks pretty accurate to that brief clip I just showed. That's our best look at him in robot mode. Though, like I said, some debate if it's accurate or not, because we don't get the best look. As for accessories, he has this unique way of swapping out his thumb to replace it with his electro whips, which sadly are very static, which kind of sucks, as you can't really pose him the best. Transformation is pretty bad, as he is mostly a shell former, because his entire vehicle is on the back, but the vehicle mode does look very nice. So overall, I'd say Jolt is pretty decent, because he does feature good articulation, and is such a nice character to include in this line since he's so obscure, so I'm just happy he exists. 76 is from the Bumblebee movie again, and oh my, from the opening scene on Cybertron too. Wow, it's Thrust. Now, Thrust here is basically a repaint of Starscream, though they thankfully gave him Blitzwing's head instead of Starscream's head, which is a big improvement, because that Starscream head was awful. They also gave him a nose cone on the top of his head to make him look more like Thrust. Now, what's interesting is that this figure is not based on G1 Thrust, unlike every other Bumblebee movie character who had the G1 look. This instead is based on his Armada design, which I much prefer and is why I bought him. But you probably don't need to buy them unless you collect the Starscream repaints. 77 is another Bumblebee movie figure. Weird. Alright, and it's Nest Bumblebee. What is Nest Bumblebee? This figure is just a repaint of 57 Bumblebee, but now he includes the Sam minifigure from 74 Bumblebee. And also, it's called Nest Bumblebee, but Nest doesn't exist until Revenge of the Fallen, and Sam isn't in the Bumblebee movie. So this figure makes no sense, and I honestly don't recommend it. I don't think it looks good in gray. And honestly, the only reason to get this is if you really need the mold. But if you don't, skip it. 78 is another Revenge of the Fallen repaint. This time it is that of Sideswipe. Sideswipe was previously number 29 in the line, and that was of his Dark of the Moon self, which did not have a roof in the car mode, but the Revenge of the Fallen one does, and as such, the figure sadly has a bigger backpack. But thankfully, the transformation remains mostly the same, and the figure has much better paint in robot mode. So overall, I'd say if you got to pick one, get 78 because of the better paint in the robot mode. 79 is an exclusive, and that is of high-octane Bumblebee from Age of Extinction. Now, the figure is only sold in a 2-pack with Age of Extinction Stinger in the Buzzworthy Bumblebee line, a line solely focused on celebrating Bumblebee. The figure is a repaint of the Age of Extinction Deluxe high-octane Bumblebee, but now with much brighter yellow. But sadly, nothing has changed, and the engineering on this figure is way below the Studio Series standard. So unless you need Stinger, you can skip this, or just get the original to supplement it, because it's the exact same figure. And honestly, the brighter yellow does not improve it that much. So yeah, this year was very bad. Over half the line was 86, and we only had 9 figures, technically 10, thanks to 77 being number before 78 and 79, even though he was released the following year. But still, 7 of those 10 are repaints. The only new molds fully are Dino, the Jolt, and the Starscream. The rest are repaints or remolds. But thankfully, next year is introducing the Legacy line. So it'd be cool to see some movie figures in there since, G1's in both lines. So why not throw the movie figures in there too? And also the core class assortment, which was introduced in the Kingdom line, is being introduced into the Studio Series line. So we'll finally have some pocket-sized Transformers to go with the movie display, which will be nice for smaller characters, but since they aren't numbered, I'll have to include them at the end of the year. He starts off with a Bumblebee movie figure, that being Brawn, a character seen very briefly at the start of the film, and not again. The figure looks very accurate to the CGI render I just showed, though the vehicle mode does look very weird to me. Though that's just because it's Cybertronian, I still don't know what to really make of it. I can't tell if it's supposed to be a tank or a drill. But beyond that, the figure has decent articulation, but the transformation is pretty simple because the vehicle is not much to begin with. So overall, I'm not really a fan of it, as I don't really like the G1 type designs, but if you do, I think this is probably a pretty good figure to track down. G1 is another Bumblebee movie figure. This time it is Wheeljack, who was also on the Cybertron opening. The robot mode looks very accurate to the character in the film, which is good, because I think this design is a lot nicer than Bronze was. And also, more importantly, the vehicle mode looks very comprehensible, looking much more like an Earth vehicle instead of a weird Cybertronian one. Beyond that, the figure has very good articulation, and the transformation is pretty fun, and while still being somewhat complex, which I really like. And so yeah, this is one of the best deluxes so far for the Bumblebee movie, so I hope this continues. 82 is another Bumblebee movie figure. Alright, this is Ratchet from the opening scene again. Strange. The figure looks decently accurate to the film, and by extension the G1 cartoon, because that's what the film's design is based on. The figure does transform into what appears to be some sort of Cybertronian van, which looks better than Brawn's vehicle at the very least. Beyond that, the transformation is a little bit hard, as the arms have a trouble lining up sometimes. And also, the figure suffers from pretty bad QC on some copies where the hips can be very loose. So overall, he's kind of alright, but I'd still say Wheeljack is better. 83 is yet another Bumblebee movie figure from the opening scene. This time it's Soundwave. The figure looks very accurate to how the CGI model for the character, which is good, because that was one of the ones I actually really liked. He does feature an opening chest gimmick like his G1 namesake, but sadly no cassette tapes are included for this figure. Now, where this figure falls is the transformation. It is very complex, and you end up with whatever this is. The box says hover tank. Does not look like a hover tank. That looks like a pair of binoculars that you'd hold. I've heard some people say it's the Green Goblin glider, but that's a disgrace to the actual Green Goblin glider. So yeah, this figure fails as a Transformer, but as a robot action figure, I think it's one of the best in the line. But that's not what you buy a Transformer for. You buy them for the transformation, and that fails. So unless you get this for a good deal, or you're just fine leaving him in robot mode forever, then that's up to you. 4 is, say it with me now, another Bumblebee figure from the Cybertron opening. This time it is Ironhide. Now, if this figure looks familiar to you at all, that is because it is identical to the 82 Ratchet, just with a new head and somehow even worse QC, as he is almost always a floppy mess. So if you don't own Ratchet and you want Ironhide instead, I recommend you also buy some joint tightener, as you are going to need it. 5 is another gosh darn Bumblebee movie. Oh my god, this... Come on, Hasbro. This is RC. Figure looks accurate to her film design and by extension G1. But they forgot to paint her eyes, so her face looks very, very weird. Beyond that, her transformation is surprisingly decent, which is uncommon for G1 looking RCs. And her vehicle mode is some sort of Cybertronian motorcycle. It looks kind of weird, but I've seen worse. So yeah, overall this figure is pretty decent, but come on, Hasbro, enough with the Bumblebee movie releases. We never had this many back-to-back releases. 86 does not actually exist in the line because of the G1 toy line, so 87 is next. And oh my gosh, it's not from the Bumblebee movie. But it is still a Bumblebee. But thankfully, I'm just happy to have something different. It's Dark of the Moon Bumblebee this time. The figure looks very good, but it is basically identical to 49 and 74. But now he has an unmasked head, some different paint, and the vehicle mode also has a spoiler. Overall, though, any of those molds are pretty good. They're all about the same in quality, so just pick which one you like the most. Personally, I'd probably say 87 just because of the spoiler in the car mode. I think that looks really cool, and also I like the unmasked head. 88 continues the Bayverse train, this time with Revenge of the Fallen Sideways. This character is briefly in the film, and you never really get a solid look at his robot mode. You mostly just see him driving away. However, the figure does look very accurate to the promo renders we have, which are on the internet. He does have a striking resemblance to Barricade, though the transformation for this figure is very different. And speaking of which, it is much, much better than Barricade, as it's a lot simpler and things tend to go in places without having to be forced in. Overall, I'd say this is an amazing figure, and I am very happy he was made, given how he's about as much screen time as the Bumblebee movie characters. 9 is back to the Bumblebee movie, hopefully not for too long, but this time it is Thundercracker. Figure looks pretty accurate to that render, but he's missing a ton of white, and if he looks familiar, that is because the figure is another repaint of 72 Starscream, this time with Thrust's head. So, it's a decent figure still. There's not much more I can really say on him, so let's move on to the next figure. He was another one I was really happy to see them do and pull off very well. It's Age of Extinction Galvatron. The robot mode looks very, very accurate, minus some paint missing, but that's excusable for budgets. Now, surprisingly, the figure does actually have a very clean profile, and back especially, which is very shocking because the original had the entire truck on the back. Speaking of the transformation, in the film, we don't see him transform properly. He is relying on this thing called transforming, which means when he transforms, he breaks into tiny little cubes and then reforms into the truck. But surprisingly, the figure actually has a manual transformation, and the truck mode looks pretty good. And even more shockingly, the transformation is not like overly complicated. It's pretty fun. And so, yeah, I'd say Galvatron's like one of the best Voyagers in the line, simply for how impressive he is as a figure on his own. 91 is the sole leader for the mainline studio series this year, and it's The Fallen, one of the most requested characters since the line began. Figure was one everyone was waiting for, and he does not disappoint, being very, very tall, and it looks amazing. The figure comes with his command staff, which can split into two pieces to plug into either of his hands, and he also has a removable face to replicate that one very funny scene from the movie where Optimus tells him to give him his face and rips it right off. The transformation is very simple, which is good because the vehicle mode is kind of a weird looking thing, though I'm kind of into it because it does look very alien in design, and that's what I like. So overall, I can't have any complaints with this figure. He looks exactly like what we always wanted the Fallen to look like in this line. And I'm so happy they finally got to make him after nearly 5 years. 92 continues the Bayverse love, this time giving the Last Knight some love with Crosshairs. Character from the film is known to have a unique trench coat design, which makes figures of him very bad in robot mode usually. But this figure handles it the best and does look very good. And it does look like he's pretty static in the stock renders, but he's actually very posable. Transformation is mostly a shell former due to the way the cloak is formed. However, it's pretty decent, though do be careful, as the back part of the trench coat, which is also the hood of the car, likes to pop out a lot and is on a clear ball joint, so do be careful. Overall, though, the figure looks very nice and is pretty posable, which is surprising. I honestly recommend him. It's nice to see these Bayverse designs from the last two films getting some love. 93 continues that love with the Last Knight Hot Rod. The figure was even better than Crosshairs, as he looks accurate to his film design, doesn't have such a unique design component like the trench coat to get in the way of his articulation, making him very, very posable, to the point where he's probably one of the most posable Bayverse figures since the Optimus Primes. The transformation is also pretty decent, which is good, and the Lambo mode looks very cool. Overall, I'd say Hot Rod is one of the best looking figures of the year, and definitely the best of the Bayverse Deluxes that came out this year, even better than Sideways. So yeah, 2022 was definitely better than 2021, though I will say the year started off badly by having 6 Bumblebee movie figures in a row. If they divided that up, it would have been a lot better, because then we wouldn't feel so repetitive, especially with 86 still being half the line. So early on in the year, if you didn't like the G1 type designs, you were out of luck. 2022 also introduced the core class assortment, which was mostly 86 for the first year, but talking about the 3 that weren't, Bumblebee movie Shockwave looks pretty good and is fun to transform, but is very size inaccurate. Ravage from the Bumblebee movie is a lot more size accurate and can transform into a box to fit into the Bumblebee movie Soundwave's chest. The final one is Dark of the Moon Laser Beacon Bumblebee Disguise, which is a cool novelty, though the figure has some pretty bad QC in the arms that cause them to pop off. So overall, not a bad start to core class, but hopefully it's better next year. Also next year, we are getting the Rise of the Beast film, which is fine. I'm excited, because the Bumblebee movie figures didn't come out a lot at once until recently, so that's good. At least it won't take over half the line like 86 did. Speaking of sublines, though, like 86, we also are getting Gamer Edition, which is cool because the Transformers games have a lot of designs, especially for the movies, so I'm curious to see what they start with. Oh, it's War for Cybertron. Well, that's cool, though I question why that's not in Legacy. If that's designed to celebrate the legacy, this kind of just feels like a little bit of a waste. But maybe it'll be good. Hopefully this doesn't take on an 86 situation. And let's see what happens in 2023 next time. And welcome back to the Rise and Fall of Studio series. Today we will be looking at 2023 to 2024 and see just how much Gamer Edition and 86 have affected the line, if at all, and also look at the new figures from 2023 and 2024 for the main line. 94 doesn't actually exist. It was supposed to be Dark of the Moon Hatchet, the final Dread brother, but he never actually came out. It was leaked through the Target systems, and we found the CGI render of the figure, but he never released. Hopefully he gets released someday, but as for this year, no, he did not come out. But hey, they started it with Bayverse, so, maybe this is a good sign. 95 is another Nest figure. Oh, man, it's Bone Crusher, at least, who is a less, more rare mold than the, Jeep Bumblebee was when he released, but still, his figure doesn't make any sense. Nest didn't exist till Revenge of the Fallen. Bone Crusher died in 2007, so it makes no sense. As for the figure on itself, it basically looks less interesting because now he's all gray. Just like how a lot of G1ers and fans of hating on the movies often say that all the robots are gray, this kind of just proves them right. 96 is, oh my god, another one of these! It's Rest Ratchet. It's the exact same thing with the Dark of the Moon Ratchet, but now in boring gray. There is no reason to buy this or Bone Crusher. This just exists to fill a space, and as obvious because they were just Target exclusives, just there to fill shelf space. If you get this, it'd probably just be for the weapon if you have the 07 Ratchet and don't want to pay the aftermarket prices for the Dark of the Moon one. Like I said, either way, I don't recommend either of them. Let's just hope the year gets better from here. 97 is the first Knifeverse figure of the year and our first Rise of the Beast figure, that being Air Razor. Now, Air Razor in the film only is ever seen in her bird mode, but a concept art for her robot mode does exist. Now, the figure is interesting because Rise of the Beast actually did have a main line, and in that line, we see the Air Razor figure, and it looks really good. Now, the figure for Studio Series looks little less good, and that is because it is mostly a retool of the Kingdom Air Razor. But that figure had really good posability and a fun transformation, so I don't mind. However, this figure fails at the bird mode. Oh god, what is with those legs? Ugh. Just no. But still, it's a decent robot mode and has still really good articulation for the line. So It's hard to say because in the film she doesn't transform, so I'm not sure if this is a recommend or not, but if you get it, it is a pretty good robot mode and fun transformation, just, ugh, that bird mode. 98 is another Maximal from Rise of the Beast. This time it is Cheetor. Now, Cheetor spends most of the film in his cheetah mode, but the figure is based on the robot mode render that I showed, and it looks pretty good. One thing I do like about it is that the design is not directly based on the Beast Wars design. While stuff like the thighs and the head shape are similar, the chest, for example, looks closer to the Beast Machine's iteration of Cheetor, which I appreciate because I always like when the designs look more varied. As for the figure itself, the figure has a good, decent transformation, though it is mostly just putting the figure on all fours and putting out a new head. But the main thing that I like about this figure is the articulation. The figure can really pull off a good pose or two, and yeah, I'd say he's a pretty good Voyager and probably the best of the Rise of the Beast Maximals so far. 99 is another Rise of the Beast figure, and it's our first Terracon in the line, that being Battletrap, one of Scourge's minions. The figure looks very accurate to the CGI model, though the colors are a bit off, and he seems to be missing all the blue paint. Thankfully, the truck mode looks pretty good, though transforming it is not very fun, as a lot of things get in the way of each other. So overall, he looks good, though one thing to note is that the chain is not included, so his mace is stuck on his hand. But beyond that, I still think it's a pretty decent looking figure because he does have a nice look to him, but still, that transformation is very bad from what I hear. Finally made it, number 100. And it can only be another Bumblebee, this time Rise of the Beast Bumblebee. Now, I bet you're wondering why they chose this Bumblebee. Well, that was because 01 was 2007 Bumblebee in his 1970s Camaro, which is how we first saw the character, while the Rise of the Beast version is our most recent look at the character. Now, the figure looks really good in robot mode, and in vehicle mode it also looks really good, and surprisingly, the transformation is simple and very fun. And yeah, this figure looks really good and poses very well, and is a great way to celebrate 100 Studio Series releases. 101 is the main villain of Rise of the Beast, that being the Terracon leader himself, Scourge, except the figure is based on the concept art and not the final film design. As the figure goes, it does look very, very cool, and the transformation, while being a bit complex, does result in a very nice truck mode. For a leader class, he's pretty tall and pretty posable, being able to pull off some really nice shots. However, if you want something that's film accurate, you're going to need to buy the upgrade kit. But I still recommend him because he is still a pretty fun figure. Though do get the upgrade kit if you want something to be more film accurate. But honestly, I'm fine with him as he is. 102 is another Rise of the Beast figure. I know, I'm shocked. It is Optimus Prime this time. The figure looks really good in robot mode, though some parts are shared with 38 Optimus, but it does clean up the kibble a bit in the robot mode especially. Transformation's pretty fun, but the vehicle mode, while it looks good at the front, has a really big problem in the back that makes it look a lot worse than 38, and especially the mainline Optimus that was available at the exact same time. But overall, it's a tough recommend because the vehicle mode is really bad, but the robot mode is really good and has really good posability, and I'm conflicted. 103 is another Rise of the Beast figure. I know, I'm shocked. It is Rhinox, our third Maximal in the line. The promo renders of this figure show a lot of brown on him, but the final figure has mostly a gray and silver color scheme, which is more movie accurate. Transformation is kind of meh. A lot of just putting things in spots and doesn't really feel great. But overall, the figure has a decent posability in robot mode, especially in the lower waist. But I don't know, man. The mainline version looks a lot less accurate, but at the same time, it is a better figure. So it's up to you what you prefer, if you want accuracy or a more fun toy. 4 is more Rise of the Beast. Why am I not surprised at this point? Anyway, it's Nightbird. The figure is mostly a rebuild of her mainline deluxe, but this time is actually painted accurately, though she did lose a sword in the process. Also, she now has her jetpack, but it's tiny, which is not movie accurate. Beyond that, the transformation isn't bad, but it's nothing special either, and apparently the kibble on her back doesn't like to stay in securely in the robot mode. Overall, I'd say this is a very middling figure overall. I can't say it did anything too well, but it is better than the mainline version, which is better than a lot of the Rise of the Beast offerings. 105, it was the breakout character for Rise of the Beast, that being Mirage. Though the figure is actually based on this piece of concept art instead. As you can see, the figure looks very, very bulky and has a wrong-colored head. Now, granted, the final release does fix the head color, but that doesn't fix the other issues, namely the clear plastic arms and backpack that make me scared to handle this figure. Also makes his transformation a pain, as apparently Porsche had very strict guidelines on how they wanted their car to look, and that affected the robot mode in significant ways, namely having the logo be one piece, which limits articulation. Overall, like, he's a great character in the film, and he deserves a much better figure. I would only recommend him if you are such a big fan of how he was in the movie. Otherwise, there's a good chance that yours is not going to last, because mine has a ton of stress marks, and I've only transformed him a few times. 106 is the final figure of the year, and it's another leader class, and of course, Rise of the Beast. It's Optimus Primal, though. Figure looks very good in robot mode, though he does come with a chain and an axe. Now, thankfully, the chain is removable and can be given to Battle Trap, while the axe can be given to the Optimus. The transformation of the figure is pretty complex, but not frustrating, and results in a pretty good gorilla mode, though the back is a bit, yeah. Now, in gorilla mode, he can also hold the transwarp key from the film, which is a nice accessory to also include. Now, the figure is a bit small for a leader. As you saw in that photo, he was about the same height as Optimus and Battle Trap, but the figure does have very good posability to make up for it, and the engineering was very cool. So yeah, I'd say this is the best Rise of the Beast figure Studio Series released. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, most of this year was just Studio Series Rise of the Beast figures. Now granted, we also did have 86 and Gamer Edition, so let's quickly look at those and see what they did. 86 only had about 7 releases this year, but one of them was this Ultra Magnus here, who is a new size class called Commander, the size above Leader class, meaning the figure is even bigger and more expensive. Now, why was this introduced in a subline and not the main line? I don't know. Grindor from last time would have been a very good choice for a Commander class figure, but no, we have to go with a G1 character, even though this is a subline to the main line. Now, we also got this Dying Ironhide and Prowl 2-pack for Targets, and that's cool that it exists, but I question why their exclusives are much cooler, while the Bayverse side gets Nest repaints that literally no one wants. I would rather take a Dying Bone Crusher with, like, you know, his arm bruised and like a sword in his face, or a Ratchet with his spark extinguished with a hole in his chest, than the Nest repaints that we did get. As for the brand new Gamer Edition, we got 5 figures, one of which is a repaint. And the first time they used that Bumblebee is not as good in the first place, so I don't know why they repainted it. Figured out a really bad transformation. But that's not the only problem with the line. We also have bad articulation, as in Megatron's knee can only bend like 10 degrees, and Barricade is just both at once. Bad transformation and bad posability. The only saving grace so far for Gamer Edition was this Optimus Prime, who is actually a very solid figure. But still, 1 out of 5 is not good odds. As for Core Class, RC from Rise of the Beast is a pretty decent figure, though she's a bit small, I think, for how big she was in the movie. Freezer is a pretty decently articulated figure with a bad transformation, same with Novocaine, which is his repaint. The Noah figure is very pointless to have, as he doesn't transform in the movie, so making him a transformer is dumb, and his transformation is non-existent. You basically just lie him down. Thankfully, his backpack's removable, so it's a decent little figure. And the only other Core Class figure was a Dark of the Moon Bumblebee, who is just a repaint of the Laserbeak from last year. Except now it makes no sense, because Bumblebee's not this small in the film, so it's pointless to own. And that's our only new Bayverse figure this year. The rest are the Nest figures, or there was this 15th anniversary pack you could buy, along with some other reissues, but that's it. Nothing new. So yeah, this was definitely the worst year for Studio Series for me. Like, there's no diversity. You either get Rise of the Beasts, G1, or Gamer Edition. That's it. Anything else, like Bayverse, or even like the Bumblebee movie, no, it doesn't exist. You have one of 3 options, you got it, and that's it. That's what I mean when I say from diverse to no Bayverse, because there was nothing this year, just repaints. But next year's the 40th anniversary of the whole brand, so I'm sure they'll course correct and give us something different. 107 is another Rise of the Beast figure? Oh, come on, it's Scorponok, those scorpion things from that one action scene, but they never transformed, but concept art does exist. Figure looks very accurate to said concept art and does actually have a nice, cool look to him, and features decent posability. Transformation, though, is where the figure really shines, as it's a lot of fun to flip back and forth. And the Scorpion mode looks very cool, and I like that the head for the robot ends up as the head for the Scorpion. That's pretty unique among the Beast formers. So yeah, overall, Scorponok is surprisingly a decent way to start the year, but my god, do I need some variety. We've had Rise of the Beast figures for 11 in a row now. 108 is yet another Rise of the Beast figure, making 12 in a row. This is Wheeljack. Now, the figure does look very accurate, though his gun is not accurate, as he never had one in the film. He just transformed into arm cannons. The figure has really bad posability, though. As you can see in this pose, you can't really make him look dynamic because of how his articulation works. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is these clear plastic windows on his back. Oh my god, they are so bad. And the reason they are bad is because of the transformation, where you need to rotate them in and out of certain positions during certain transformation steps, and they like to pop off all the time, making this transforming figure a nightmare, which sucks because the vehicle looks very good. So yeah, overall, I would say skip him. If you need a Rise of the Beast Wheeljack, get the mainline version. Sure, it doesn't have the door wings and looks a little less accurate, but it also poses better, transforms better, and doesn't seem like it's at risk of snapping at the wings. 109 is thankfully not a Rise of the Beast figure, but it is still a Nightverse figure. But it's also the first concept art figure in the line, and it's Bumblebee movie Megatron, which is an excellent pick to start. The figure looks very good and accurate to said concept art, though he is a bit shiny, but that's fine, as he makes up for it in posability, having really good joints, including fingers. The transformations, though, I said transformations, keep that in mind, is not great, as his tank mode, while looking okay, is not easy to get to. And same thing with the jet mode. They don't really do much, and they don't feel great to transform. But still, if you want like a good action figure, then it's probably the best Megatron action figure you can get. But again, it's also not based on anything in particular. It's based on a piece of artwork that was canceled of a Megatron that looks exactly like the G1 design. And that's all. 110 is another Nightverse figure, thankfully from the Bumblebee movie still. This time it is Shockwave. Now, previously he had a core class figure, which is pretty decent, and so this figure is mostly just an upscale of that, but doesn't feature a new hose extension and much better paint. Though it also removes a bicep swivel, which is kind of stupid, but whatever. Thankfully, the transformation is almost identical with a few extra steps, which was good, because it was a good transformation. Though now it's a bit simple, but thankfully the figure is pretty tall for a Voyager, and overall, I'd say Shockwave is a pretty good figure. I really got no complaints with him here, and yeah, I'd say you should get him, even if his bicep swivel isn't there. 111 is another Bumblebee movie figure, and another addition to the concept art line. This time it is Sunstreaker. This character is a terrible addition to the concept art line, as no actual concept art exists of him besides the one used on the box. And instead, this design is seemingly just the G1 design, but put through a filter to look a little more realistic. But even then, the figure doesn't really even look that realistic, as he's very cartoony inspired, a lot more than the actual Bumblebee movie figures. Now, the transformation isn't fun either, as things have very little clearance due to the transformation, which is very sad because the vehicle mode does actually look kind of decent. But yeah, I'd say just don't buy this figure. The only reason you'd want this is if you're a fan of G1 designs and want to have a higher Bumblebee movie cast. And if that's the case, go ahead. But for me, I need something different than that to justify buying the figure. 112 is special, as it's our first figure from the Transformers 1 movie, that being Optimus Prime himself. The figure looks very accurate to the film design, though the gray is a little off compared to how it is in the movie. But thankfully, the figure has really good articulation to make up for it, and also has above average accessories. Now, the transformation is not the best, and it's a little finicky. Plus, the fists are obviously revealed in truck mode. But beyond that, I'd say this figure is actually really solid and a great way to start figures for that film. Now, if only we can continue to get some BAYVERSE figures soon, as it's been a while. 113 is another Nightverse figure, and from the Bumblebee movie. This time it is Skywarp. The figure is identical to the previous Seekers, but now has a slightly bigger head. I know, exciting. Like I said, you can get any of these Seekers. They are all pretty good. I personally went with Starscream and Thrust. Maybe you'd like all of them or just one of them. Yeah, the Seekers aren't for everyone, so just pick your favorite colors. If you can, only get one version of the mold. 114 continues with the new Transformers 1 film and gives us Megatron. Figure looks accurate to the design of the character from the film, which itself is accurate to G1 Megatron, minus few design changes here and there. figure has pretty good accessory count, just like the Optimus, though those two guns are mostly meant for his tank mode. And speaking of which, the transformation is pretty fun, even though most of it is in his legs. But it does result in a very solid tank, unlike Optimus's truck. So yeah, Megatron's pretty good for a figure from the film. And yeah, but it's great, but that gray is not accurate to the bright silver from the film. And yeah, that's it. We're already done. I'm not joking. There was only 8 figures this entire year for the main line. Despite being the 40th anniversary, the variety was shockingly low. Mostly just one of the 4 series, either Bumblebee movie, Rise of the Beast, Gamer Edition, or 86. That's it. There was no Bayverse at all. Even though there was 5 films to choose from, they didn't use them at all. This was also the final year for Core Class, so let's quickly take a look at those. Last Night Mohawk is the only Bayverse figure to be made this year, but it's a great one. The robot mode looks basically perfect with 0 kibble. Transformation is pretty simple because he's a Core Class, but the motorcycle mode does look pretty good, even if you can't technically see his head in the middle of it, but it's not that bad for, how cheap it is. Meanwhile, concept art, Rumble, and Frenzy are not very good. Once again, no actual concept art exists for either of them. They just exist to fill out the Bumblebee movie cast and can transform into boxes to fit inside Bumblebee movie Soundwave, just like the Ravage figure before them. But what really upsets me is that Bayverse Frenzy is one of the most requested figures for Studio Series because he's the final 2007 character missing. But instead we got something that doesn't actually exist, that just looks G1, instead of something that was actually in the movie and had a large role. And lastly, Bumblebee movie Starscream, just like Shockwave before him, is completely out of scale, but is a fun little pocket-sized figure, basically doing what the Voyager did with less steps, and pretty much worse mode all around because you can see his hands. But for the final ever Core Class, because yes, this was the last one they ever released, which means that no 2007 Frenzy is not coming out unless he's part of a bigger box set. So that's great. Thanks, Hasbro. But yeah, it's an alright figure to end Studio Series Core Classes with. So yeah, majority of this year was just 86 figures. And for the 40th anniversary of the brand, this is really bad. Now, granted, we also did have Gamer Edition, but they only had 5 releases, just like last year. And while the quality was a lot higher, a lot of the figures were still kind of subpar. Especially this Bumblebee here, who was a reissue of a figure that was released previously in a different 2-pack that wasn't part of Studio Series, so he just took up a slot basically for no reason, and it's based on a video game that didn't even come out, so it's doubly pointless to exist. The biggest issue of all was the severe lack of Bayverse figures. We only got Mohawk. He was the only one we got. Meanwhile, 86 got Optimus Prime, but not even just that, a Commander Optimus Prime, while Studio Series Mainline has 0 Commanders. 86 gets 2 in a row, and a Deluxe Bumblebee. Now, both of these figures were in the main line recently with the Earthrise Optimus and Bumblebee figures from 2021. And while both figures were good enough at the time, these are good improvements, but did it really have to happen this quick? There are Studio Series figures that need to be made for characters who haven't had figures since 2009, 2011, 2014, etc. There was just no reason for Bayverse to get shafted like this, especially since the main line was celebrating the entire brand all the way from G1 to Cyberverse, literally 1984 to 2018. However, there are 2 exceptions, those being Beast Machines and Transformers Energon, as those series only got 1 Core Class figure each. Beast Machine's getting this Cheetor, while Energon got a Megatron/Galvatron figure. And the reason for that is these shows are some of the least popular in the fandom. So I wonder why Bayverse also technically is now included in this shuffle, despite being the most successful part of the brand financially. And this is the reason I say the toy line fell, because for the last 3 years since the 86 line introduced, it basically took over the line, starting with 50% of the figure releases, and basically just doing that over and over again. The Bayverse is what started the line. Even back when it was early on, the figures still had tons of variety. We never had a situation like the Bumblebee movie or Rise of the Beast where they kept spamming releases back to back to back. Even when early on we had a ton of 2007 figures, we never went more than 2 at a time without spreading it out to something else. And that's the issue I have right here. This line no longer felt diverse. It felt like G1 adjacent, because that's all the designs were. Sure, there were some exceptions. Rise of the Beast Wheeljack, for example, looks different than his G1 counterpart. But, like, look at the Optimuses. They have to follow design standards of a chest windows, square proportions, etc. And that's why I felt this line fell. And now I wonder if it can get better. And we'll find out next time when we talk about the current year of Studio Series and see if it can go through a redemption arc or if it's doomed to stay in a fallen state forever. And welcome back. Will be the finale of the Rise and Fall of Studio Series, or should I say the redemption of Studio Series. Number 115 is from the Rise of the Beast again. This figure is called Double Punch. As you can see, it is a red Scorponok. And, well, the Scorponok mold was pretty good, though it was color inaccurate. There are red Scorponoks in this film, so this was a little more accurate. Overall, it's still a pretty good mold, so either version is worth it if you just want it. I personally prefer the colors on the Scorponok, but this one is more movie accurate. 116 is a remake figure in the line, that being Bumblebee movie Bumblebee. Now, previously, the figure looked like this. It was decent for the time, but not great in retrospect. But now we have this, and this looks a lot better, though he still has the door wings, but you can adjust them on the back, as this photo shows, and that makes the profile look a lot cleaner in the robot mode. Beyond that, the figure is not perfect. He does actually have less articulation than the original, which does kind of suck, but he does look a lot nicer, and more importantly, he transforms a lot better. So if you had to pick one, I'd recommend this one just because it's more accurate and it's much easier to transform than the original. 117 should be next, but instead it's actually 94, and that is because, yes, we finally got Bayverse Hatchet after being leaked back 2 years ago. And this will make our first Bayverse figure since 96, which means 21 figures went by. Or, if you don't count repaints, 23. Now, it's Hatchet. The figure doesn't look the greatest, but, you know, with the design, you gotta make some compromises here. And he does at least have a new mold, because, you know, Crankcase did not get a new mold and was just a really bad repaint of Crowbar. But thankfully, Hatchet is better than that. And his transformation's okay. Looks like a good Jeep. And yeah, overall, he's a decent little figure. I'm just happy he got released at all. And now we can finally have a complete team of Dreads, assuming you got a Berserker figure to fill in for Crankcase, because that original one is pointless. 118 is our final numbered figure in the line. After this, there's no more numbers. Anyway, it is Rise of the Beast, Ape Link. The figure looks very good in Gorilla mode, and that is because he is a repaint of Optimus Primal, even coming with the Transwarp key, though now painted more like a carrot. The figure has these blades in his Gorilla mode that can detach and become weapons in his Robot mode, which does look pretty cool, and does have a slightly different head sculpt than Primal, but not by much. Overall, he is a very cool looking figure, but I mostly recommend you leave him in Beast mode so you can replicate the scenes that he was actually in the movie, since he never transformed. And yeah, with that, that's it for all the numbered figures. Going forward, there will be no numbers. The first of our numbered figures brings us back to Transformers 1. This time it is B127. The figure looks very good in robot mode and actually comes with above average accessories like with the Optimus Prime. Not only does he have one, blaster hand with the knife, but two, and a big gun as well. Transformation is also pretty fun and very simple, which is a nice change of pace. And I like that you can also remove the knives from the blasters if you want. And so yeah, overall, I'd say this figure is really good and is actually a big improvement over the main line. Next, we actually got another Bayverse character, which is surprising because it's been kind of quiet with them lately. We got Dark of the Moon Q. Now, this character had a figure in the original toy line, but it didn't release in most markets. So this figure is how most people will get it, and it's actually pretty cool. Articulation is a little limited, but he's Q. He didn't really do much in the movie. He just kind of invented a few things and then died, but he looks really cool. They captured his look very well. The transformation is a bit fiddly, but it's not the most complex thing, and it's actually a lot better than the Rise of the Beast Wheeljack, which is what matters. And yeah, overall, I'd say he's still pretty cool. Like, just the fact that he exists, because a lot of us have been waiting since 2011 to have Q in our collection, because we didn't want to pay, international shipping or whatever. But now we have one, and it's really good. Now we are back to Transformers 1, and this time it is the film's main villain, Sentinel Prime. The robot mode looks very accurate to the film design, being basically perfect, and like the film, he can convert into his battle mode. But because that wasn't enough of a transformation, they also threw in a jet mode. It looks okay. But thankfully the robot mode is enough to carry this figure. He looks very cool, though it is weird he doesn't have his sword that he used in the movie and instead has weapons he barely used, but that's okay. And overall, he's really good. I'd honestly recommend him because he was such a good character in the movie. And now we reach the current newest Studio Series figure that's I'm recording. It is Age of Extinction Optimus Prime. This figure looks pretty great, though that small sword is inaccurate, and that's because it actually is a dagger that plugs into his wrist. His real sword was stored on the back the whole time, and looks great with his shield. Speaking of the shield can split to be the gun, like in the movie, and they can both store on his back, which is pretty big, but thankfully it's on a mushroom peg, just pop it right off. And now the reason I really like that little dagger piece is because his wrists have to bend in to use it, which means his posability is amazing. Now, sadly, one problem a lot of people have, besides the paint budget, is the size class, as he is no bigger than a Voyager, but that's because of screen accuracy, so you can replicate scenes. Now, the transformation, one would think is very complex given the design, but no, it's actually only 44 steps, and it's a lot of fun. It's not frustrating in the least. It feels like playing with a 100-piece puzzle. It's complex and hard to figure out sometimes, but you don't ever feel lost. And yeah, this is probably my favorite figure in the line, and is one of the reasons I say this year was the redemption of Studio Series, but we're not done just yet. Recently showed off at a Hasbro live stream, we also have figures of Transformers 1 Elita 1 and Starscream, and both of them look very cool, but the third one is what has me very excited, as it is KSI Widowmaker. Now, this figure is actually a concept art figure based on a Bayverse character, the first of its kind, which is great, because when the concept line started, this is what I was hoping for. Now, granted, they changed her color a bit to make her orange and turned her into a McLaren, but that's okay. I'm just happy that they finally doing what I wanted them to do with the concept art line from the start. Talking about Studio Series 86 for a second, we are getting a leader class Megatron who looks very accurate to the film design, but he does not transform into a Walter P-38 handgun, instead of turning into a concept tank. And it looks really cool. I actually prefer the tank because it just makes more sense than shrinking, but I know a lot of G1 fans are upset, and I do sympathize, but there really was nothing Hasbro could do, as guns are very hard to sell to kids. They are also getting a 86 Devastator, and he looks really cool. Now, like the Bayverse version, you do have to buy all the components separately, but thankfully this time there's only 6, and yeah, he looks really cool, and it has been about 10 years since the last G1 Devastator at retail, so I'm happy to see that he came back. As for Gamer Edition, for the War for Cybertron game, we only got 2 repaints of older figures. However, we did get a new mold of a G1 Optimus from the game Transformers Devastation. Oh, and 2 repaints as well from old molds that were been used over and over again in the main line that don't even really do a good job of looking like the game models themselves. Except for the Optimus, because he was, actually a new mold. I know what you're thinking. Wow, all it took was 4 Bayverse figures to say that this line got redeemed? Well, no. What caused me to change my mind is the leaked listings for 2026 and 2027, which show a lot of potential. The first thing that caught my eye and the thing I'm very excited about is a Last Night Nemesis Prime. Oh, this is going to be so cool. Now, granted, it is probably just going to be a repaint of the Age of Extinction version, but I don't care. Nemesis Prime looks really cool, and I really want that mold again in the Nemesis color scheme. The next thing on the list that got me excited was the Last Night Barricade. Man, I really like this design a lot, and the original figure from the Last Night Toyland was actually really cool. So I can't wait to see how they top that, because that figure was already pretty good. Following that, we got reports of an Age of Extinction Bumblebee, and this one's great, because the original, that was an Age of Extinction toy, alright? Now, granted, Bumblebee does look very similar to Stinger, so part of me wonders if they'll find a way to retool Stinger into Age of Extinction Bumblebee. But they would have to change the car parts, because Stinger is a Pagani, not a Camaro. Also, there's a question if it's the Bumblebee design I showed or his evasion mode / high octane version that he used at the beginning of the movie. But that one technically already has a figure, so am I leaning towards the new Camaro Bumblebee that we see for the second half of the film. Speaking of evasion modes, though, an evasion mode Optimus from Age of Extinction was also leaked, and this is exciting because the original Voyager lacked any actual rust on him and just went with the traditional Optimus color scheme. But while the Japanese version did have the rust, it wasn't the best painted. It looks mostly like a ghost Optimus, so this one version will hopefully be even better than that. And then we're getting a Leader Class Hound from the Last Night, and that's exciting because previously the Last Night Hound was a Voyager, and that figure was pretty good, so I can only imagine the Leader would be even better. And I hope it comes with a ton of guns like the Age of Extinction version had, because Hound isn't that tall, so if they can throw in a decent amount of weaponry for him, it'd be a good idea. And then we're getting a Last Knight Leader Class Megatron. Yes! Oh my god, I love this design so much. And the original Leader figure did not do it justice. Voyager was a lot better, but this could be even better than that. This is like one of my favorite Bay designs ever, so I am so happy they're making a figure of him in the Leader Class assortment to go with the Optimus. Beyond that, with listings show a Rise of the Beast Scourge, which we don't know if it's a repack or a new mold to look more accurate. Also, we have prototypes shown off of a TF1 Arachnid and a Voyager TF1 Alpha Trion, both of which look pretty cool. For the stuff we don't know anything about, we also have a TF1 Orion Pax, a TF1 Thundercracker, and a TF1 Soundwave, all of which are deluxe class figures, and I'm sure they'll be pretty good. I can imagine the Optimus Prime will be reused for the Orion Pax, and Starscream will be reused in some way for Thundercracker. But what puzzles me the most for the main line is that we are getting our first Titan figure in 2026, and we don't know who it is. Now, popular picks I see are Rise of the Beast Stratosphere, the Last Knight Dragonstorm, who would be awesome, a Dark of the Moon Devcon, who I think is a little too obscure for a Titan-sized figure. But I thought about it, and maybe it's a remake of Grimlock. I mean, he's a popular character, and the original figure is too small. So a Titan-sized one would scale perfectly with the new Age of Extinction Optimus. But other exciting news is that we're also getting a comic line next year. Sort of a replacement to 86, which is supposedly ending in 2026, though given a recent poll Hasbro did, I have some doubts. But still, a comic doesn't specifically just mean G1 comic. It can also mean Bayverse comics, Dreamwave comics, etc. And that's exciting because there's a lot of cool designs that only exist in comic form. And so this ends the Rise and Fall of Studio series. Now, what made me change my mind in making this last part of Redemption? Well, it was two things. The first thing was the leaked listings showing a much bigger diversity, as we're getting figures from 4, 5, G1, video games, and comics now. And that's good variety, along with Rise of the Beast. Forgot that one. But still, that's good. That's what I was talking about. There was no diversity because they lacked Bayverse, so we were stuck with G1, Bumblebee movie, and Rise of the Beast for like 2 years straight. And they all have similar looking designs. But now we're back to the diversity that the line prided itself on when it began. And the second thing that made me feel more apathetic towards G1 inclusion in Studio Series was the Age of Extinction Optimus releasing and just being an amazing figure that I can tell had a ton of engineering and time put into it. And if the Bayverse figures that I love so much are going to be like few and far between, then if they're this quality going forward, I have no problem waiting. And yeah, that is why this final part is now the Redemption of Studio Series instead of the Rise and Fall. I hope you all enjoyed watching these videos as they come out. It's been a lot of fun making this project, and I hope to see this line continue to do well, because it does really mean a lot to me that Hasbro had faith in the movies to create a line solely celebrating them.